Hello, Jfokus. Are you ready for some faster, slimmer Docker? Woohoo! Yeah. But first, a few words on another subject, favorite subject of mine, namely myself. My name is Gustaf. This is a blank page, so you focus your attention on me instead. I work as a developer, a consultant at Mejsla AB, which is a small consulting company here in Stockholm. We intend to be the best workplace for senior developers in Sweden, and I've been there for almost 15 years, so I probably agree, roughly. And anywho, today's talk is on how to achieve faster builds and slimmer images with Docker multistage builds. I have a demo repo on GitHub, which you can find by scanning this QR code, which has everything I will be talking about today and a few bonuses. It's really neat to check it out. So we're gonna learn like 3 things today, or you can group the things we learn into 3 things. First is how to inspect Docker images to like make sure that we built them properly. And we will also see how to change and why to change a single stage build to a multi-stage build. And we're gonna learn to do a lot of cool tricks with the Docker build cache to achieve faster builds. So let's get into the action. By the way, pretty much any technical question that you have today can probably be answered by looking at this document, the Dockerfile reference. I hope that I give you a sort of more easily digestible version of it. But it's a pretty exhaustive document, this. So pretty much anything can be answered there, almost. Some things are sort of not entirely documented though, but you can find them if you Google enough. So I have here a demo project, which is, as you perhaps can see from the files, it's a Node project, because Node has some other interesting challenges other than like Maven or Gradle. So it's harder, so there's more to do, so that's why I do it. Also, I work with like React day to day, so I'm comfortable here. If something breaks, I probably know how to fix it. Anyway, this is a Node project. We have package JSON, which has my dependencies. I have yarn.lock, which has even more dependencies, or sort of the exact versions. I also have this wonderful directory, Node modules, and like any self-respecting app, it weighs in at a mere 227 megs for this like out-of-the-box create React app. It was actually, I did this a few weeks ago. It was 270 megs then. So like depends on which day you do it. In November it was like 250, I think. So I don't know. Right, and feel free to ask questions during the talk. And when you ask a question, if I do not repeat it before answering it, you are free to throw like objects or foul words at me. So yeah, right. This is the Node project. So the first thing I'm going to do is I use yarn instead of npm. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's better, at least if you ask the yarn people. So if I would be a CI server, which I'm not, I would say something like yarn install frozen log file. That means like use the dependencies that yarn.log says. And since I've already done this, it went really quick. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is yarn tests dash dash ci dash dash watch all equals false, and we run the tests. Tests are nice, right? We don't have to build the app because this is JavaScript. It's uncompiled, but we're actually gonna build it anyway. And this generates a directory full of like HTML files, JavaScript files, which are fit to be served on the interwebs. And like everyone else who is cool, we, of course, run this in Kubernetes. So I have to package this into a Dockerfile. And this Docker container, or this Docker image I'm going to build, is just an Nginx image. If you don't know Nginx, it's a sleek and very efficient web server, which is good at serving static files, among other things. So what we do here is that we pick a version of Nginx that we're comfortable with. Please don't use latest. And then we copy the build folder from outside to this location. And then we run nginx-t, which checks that the configuration is okay and like not broken. It's a good thing to do, especially if you like add extra config files for Nginx, which I don't do here, but it's kind of like how a very simple functioning Dockerfile would look. So Docker build, and right. This happens because I have a Docker ignore file. Which tells Docker to ignore the build directory. Classic mistake. This went better when I sort of renamed the Docker ignore. Right. But at this point, I realized that I want to, these are just static files. So I want to serve them compressed, and I can compress them ahead of time. I don't have to do this when Nginx is up and running. I can just sort of run gzip on all the files and have them compressed ahead of time, and we won't have to spend any time, and we can do it with like the heaviest compression, and we don't have to pay for any CPU on AWS or wherever we're running. So I just run this little bash snippet here, or well, it's actually ash, because we're using an Alpine version of an Alpine container, the Alpine distro, which is like small and doesn't have much extra in it. So let's build again. And we can see a few interesting things here. We see that step number 2 is cached, which means that it looks at the input, like the previous stage and the stuff we're going to do with the previous stage, and it finds that I have already done this. So it doesn't need to do it again. Then it finds a new instruction, which it hasn't seen at this point. So from here on, we've busted the build cache. So we have to run the compression again, and we have to run the configuration check again. But that's okay. Now, let's learn the first important thing that we're going to learn here today. It's a command called Docker history. How many here have used Docker history to look at what they're doing? Right, so what we see here is a bunch of layers. And these things from 4 weeks ago, they are obviously not mine. because I haven't been here this long. So this is from the base image, from the Nginx image. And then we can see we have one line here for the copy, and one for the gzipping, and one for the configuration check. And each of these lines is a layer. And when we build a Dockerfile, we sort of build layer by layer. And so the next layer, as I said, is like the previous layer plus an instruction. And if the input of the instruction, either the files that you're adding to the next layer, or the script that you're going to run, or whatever, if they have already been done, if Docker can find this in the cache, then you don't have to do it again. And not doing things again is very nice if we have to, I don't know, download 220 megs of node dependencies. So let's keep on working from here. So the first thing we're going to do is that we want to turn this into a multi-stage build. Because, I mean, when we do this copy here, how do we know that the build folder exists? We don't. How do we know how it was built? We don't. It's probably encoded somewhere out in the Jenkins file or something, but if you ever try to run a Jenkins file on your computer, you know that you usually give up, or I give up at least. If we can move everything into Docker, we have a very, very neatly specified way to define our build, and we can run it locally without any problems. Well, I mean, it's easier than running Jenkins locally, at least. So the first thing we're going to do is oh, and by the way, this line is interesting. It looks like a comment, but it's actually significant. This tells Docker to use a newer syntax, a newer version of the Dockerfile syntax. This means that you can build containers using modern features, even if you are on an old Docker version, because the Docker/Dockerfile :1.4, that's just an image identifier. So it pulls down an image which it uses to build your container. It's really sort of inception going on here. So you don't have to worry about the version of Docker that's on your build server, and all the other versions, like what version of Node am I using, what shell do I have access to, what programs are installed that I can call from the shell. This will all be defined in the Dockerfile. So the first step here is so the first thing I do is I give this stage. A stage is sort of a bunch of commands which begin with a from instruction. And instead of copying build from the outside, I copy from something that I call verified build. And what could that be? Well, first, let me just there we go. Well, I want another stage, which is called verified build. And so I just add another from instruction. I also tell it to sort of have a current working directory. I just used /app because why not? And since I have my docker ignore file properly, I could just I copy absolutely everything from the repo into this Docker image, or into this stage. So now I have like my checked out Git repo inside of a Docker container. So now I can do these yarn things. I download dependencies, I run the tests, and I run the build. This will unfortunately not work because to not sort of destroy the conference Wi-Fi, I have set up a local Nexus server which hosts a proxy of the public NPM repo for me. So, and being having visited a couple of security presentations earlier today, I have learned that we have to think about security. So this needs authentication. I have authentication in my npm-rc file, and I guess most of us have some kind of like private repository where we fetch artifacts from, either Artifactory or Nexus or probably more. Who here sends build secrets to their Docker builds using build arguments? Do not raise your hands because someone will look at your badge and then they will do Docker history and then you can see all the build arguments and their exact values. Instead, there's a neat trick. You can add flags to the run commands. So I can tell run to mount a secret. I give it the ID npm-rc. It has to be there. You have to pass it from when you call Docker build. And I want it to end up in /root/.npm-rc because that's where yarn looks for it. So yarn sort of twiddles a bit with npm stuff too. Right? So now we have to sort of give the correct incantations to Docker build. This is only because I'm running my Nexus on localhost, so Docker has to have like the same localhost inside of the container that's currently building. This is not something that you would normally need to do, since you probably host your repositories on another computer than your own. And so I tell it that I also want to send a secret called npm-rc, and the source is my npm-rc file. So let's see if this works. And this is great television. Watching someone download npm, I spoke to a few people, and they were all eagerly looking forward to seeing me download npm. This takes a bit of a while, and one of the main objectives here is to get this thing to happen faster. I'm going to do it a few times, and most of the times will be faster than the previous, until suddenly it becomes a no-op. Right, and well, this happens. Sort of Docker's the network equals host thingy is not good. It's not fast. It's like when I do this at home, it's faster to use like the public npm repo, which is like not on the same computer, but it retries. That's one of the good things about it. And I mean, this thing downloads a lot of stuff. There's a lot of, I mean, the Node community loves small libraries. Who here heard of LeftPad? Yeah, fantastic. And I think we should be sort of reaching the end here soon. It takes about 2 minutes, a a bit less today because it wasn't as much dependencies. Yeah, hold your breaths. Oh yeah, hey, look, 107 seconds. That's our benchmark for today. As I said, this is great content, right? A chubby guy running npm install. Sorry, yarn install. And we're done. We now have, let's take a look at this image. You can also ask, like, what did I actually build here? Because I have the from node thingy, and I have the from nginx thingy, or stage, as we call them, not thingies. If you don't specify a stage to build, then Docker will build the last stage in the file. And things are looking pretty good. We can see that we could actually reuse this step, because the files that were built in the build stage in the Dockerfile turned out to be the exact same files that were built like outside of Docker. So that stage was cached. And then we run the gzipping, and then we then we run the gzipping, and then we run the configuration test. But what if we want to see what the builder stage, what happens there? Let's have a look. So I can tell Docker to build a specific stage by passing dash dash, not point point, dash dash stage, verified build, dash dash target. And there's not much work to do because we've already done all of this. There we go. Exporting layers takes some time. It sounds like perhaps, maybe, there's a lot of stuff here. So we can see here that, all right, we create the working directory, we copy in all the files, we run yarn install, and end up with 315 megabytes. And why would that be? I mean, it's only 220 outside, although 315 is nearly nothing. It's 50% more. So any ideas on what this could be? Well, I can tell you, because I did some research on this when it's happened and caused problems to me. When you download, I mean, you download to a directory in your repo, but Yarn also puts things in a cache folder, which is a pretty good thing, because if you're like downloading the next time, if you clean node modules, then you don't have to download everything. You can just use the local cache. But we don't really, this cache doesn't do any good here, because we're not going to do yarn install again in this image. And it doesn't benefit any other builds, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we, A, didn't have to keep it in this image, and B, could share it with other builds? Turns out that we can. So just like we can mount a secret, we can also mount a cache folder or directory. I never sort of decide which term I'm going to use. So what we do here is we just tuck on a bunch of flags on the run step, and we say we want to mount a cache, and it has the ID yarn cache, and I want it to end up at this location. And I also happen to know that yarn uses some stuff in the npm cache, of course. So we mount another cache, which we call npm cache, and any subsequent builds of this or another project that mounts the cache directories with the same ID, they can, if circumstances are auspicious, sort of get the cache directory that I populate with this build, so they don't have to download stuff. So this is typically something that you want to use for the .m2 folder if you're using Maven or something which uses the same directories as Maven. And then we also need to tell yarn to use this specific cache folder. I mean, we could just delete the cache, but that seems unnecessary because we want to share it with other builds. You know, when you copy Docker files from the interwebs, there's usually apk add -- no cache, or you just do rm-rf/something/cache at the end. But this is better because you can reuse stuff. Now, I know you love watching me doing yarn install, but before I do it again, there's as I said, dependencies are specified in package.json and yarn.lock. If I change a source file, like a bit of HTML or something, do I need to download all the dependencies again, or should I be able to reuse the stuff? Trick question. Yeah, I should be able to use the same stuff, because if package.json or yarn.lock doesn't change, then the dependencies haven't changed. But I mean, this little thing busts the cache if any file has changed. And that's a bit excessive. So instead of adding the entire repo at the same time, I'm going to be a little clever and only add, as a first step, add only the files that are needed for yarn install. These happen to be package.json and yarn.lock, and also settings files for yarn and npm. So when I run yarn install here, this will be a fairly desolate place, the directory I'm working in, with only the bare minimum for downloading the dependencies. But that means that I can change source files, images, HTML, CSS, whatever, without having to download all the dependencies over again. So if you have stuff that you want to avoid doing too much, do it early, and make sure you have added only the files that are needed for it. Yeah, I was going to say something about Maven, but I realized that it's not really relevant, because you can just mount a cache for the M2 folder and you're probably pretty happy. So let's see if this works. I hope it does. Right, so yeah, sorry, npm install again. I should probably find something good to talk about. So the why am I so set on sort of cleaning up this image? I mean, the build stage isn't really. I mean, if you do Docker pull on the sort of resulting Nginx image, then you won't get the builder stage. Why do I even care? Well, it turns out that you do have a build cache locally, but you can also use existing images as cache sources. So, and without like any configuration of your Docker repo or anything, you can tell Docker to like use previous builds as cache sources. If it can't find a cache entry like in your local build cache, it checks through the images to use as build source cache sources, and sort of tries them and pulls relevant layers if there are any. So that's the sort of ultimate goal here, because we're going to have to we're going to push some, well, all the layers here we're going to push. They're not going to be pulled when you pull the like when your production servers pull the Nginx image, but we can reuse them as caches. Very nice. Right? Only 1.5 minutes now. Maybe my Nexus has sort of reached some JIT hotspot or something. Great success. We're almost done. There we are. We have a build. Let's open like app.js, and I say learn Docker. And yes, your install was cached. I broke the tests, but that's okay. I can just do undo. And we build again. Right. Yeah. So mission accomplished. We have a pretty much faster build. And even if we did like change, add one dependency or something, the build would be much faster because we have the mounted cache directories. So it still takes some time because Node does things after downloading the dependencies. It can like build native stuff. So that's why we're not like, that's why just the cache won't suffice, because that can take like half a minute anyway. So we now have a very cache-friendly multi-stage build. Isn't that neat? Yay! I promised you that I would show you how to turn your existing Docker repo into a distributed build cache. So actually, you don't need to do anything other than say you add this. This is a bit clunky, and there are a few slightly clunky things in multi-stage builds, which feel like I hope Docker will sort of make this a bit less weird in the future. But anyway, you add this build argument where you tell it to use build kit inline cache equals 1. So we build, and right. And we also probably, I mean, when we're building this on our Jenkins server or wherever, we also probably want to give it a tag. So this is the 1.0 version of our app. So learn React and Docker. This doesn't break the test. So now we're going to build like 1.1. And yeah, we can do that. It's going to be super fast. But let's say that this is if you have like a multi-node setup where you have several worker nodes, and this is a new node that hasn't seen any action at all, or hasn't built this product anyway. So I'm gonna put my reputation on the line here and say Docker builder prune -a. This means wipe the build cache. Yes, of course. Everyone loves to watch npm install. So if I now try to build this, you will see an all too familiar events unfolding. We don't want to do this. We can do better. We already built and tagged the previous version, right? So let's just tell Docker that we want to take our cache from the Jfokus 1.0 version. And let's see what happens. I hope it works. Yes, cached. No, not cached. God damn it. Right. Why does it not? Oh man. What have I done? Well, shame on me. This should have worked. This should be faster today since we at least have the cache folders. Let's see what good they do. What have I done? No, that I've done that several times. Oh well, let's just see how this plays out. Maybe I just used the wrong tag. Oh. Oh well. This is highly embarrassing. Well, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Right, I've been dreaming nightmares about this. Well, we managed to cut a few seconds. It's sort of a bit faster. Yay. Well, I did Docker builder prune, so the caches weren't populated either. Wow, this is a great example. And we're done. Well, a lesson in humility. What the heck was I doing wrong? Oh, well. Huh. Well, no, you don't have to push it. Or I didn't when I tried this out a few weeks ago, at least. But anyway. Yeah, whatever. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Sorry about this. Okay, let's give it one. If this doesn't happen, I'll become a farmer. I'm probably no good at that either, but so yeah. So anyway, one of the neat things with cache from is that yeah, turns out I don't. Yeah. Ah, builder prune shouldn't do that. Oh well. Whatever. Let's not troubleshoot this. I'm very sorry. Um, um, anyway, when you do this the right way, um, then sorry, you can tuck on any amount of like these cache from directives. And the images don't need to exist. So what I've done in the projects that I'm on is that I use cache from latest, which is like the latest master build. And I also have a latest tag for each pull request branch. So on pull request branches, I like cache from the previous build on that branch. And for when I do merges to have them go quick, I have this tag that's like the last build wherever it was, like either pull request or master build, and I can like use all three or even more as a cache source, and if they don't exist, Docker will print a little error message, but it won't fail or anything, and just happily go on looking in the other images, which it may or may not find. But caching from latest is generally a pretty good idea. Or like the previous build, if you have a good way to determine the tag or identifier for the previous build. Right. So I have 5 minutes left. And how do you like parallelizing? Yes? Yay. Thank you very much. Yeah, things are great. So let's just sort of quickly parallelize our build. If you're running Java, for example, you will obviously have to compile your stuff before you can run the tests, but this is JavaScript. We follow no man's law. We test our stuff before we compile it. So there's not really any reason why like these two steps should run in sequence. They could run like in parallel. So what we're going to do is that this will no longer be verified build. This will be, say, workspace. Whoops. As workspace. Things are going great. And I'm just going to sprinkle more and more stages here. So I can use a previous stage as a base image. So I can say from workspace as build. And here's where I do yarn build. And from workspace as test, I run the tests. And then I sort of stitch them together in another step. And let's use the same things I do in, same identifiers I use in my cheat sheet. So we create yet another stage, which this time is based on passing tests. So this stage will fail if the tests fail. And then we just copy the build output from the build HTML stage. And a cool thing here is that Docker looks at all the upstream stages, and if they don't depend on each other, it runs them in parallel. So let's do something like, just to sort of make it visual, we add a sleep here. And let's just, whoops, clean this up. And do you see, run yarn build and run yarn test are both running at the same time. We have parallelized our build by just moving a few lines around. Obviously, this won't work if like the steps depend on each other. But if you have like different test suites, you can run them in parallel. And Docker will use like the resources it has, and maybe, probably, parallelize them for you. I think I'm kind of out of time. 2 minutes left. Do we have any questions? Yeah, you could do that, but it's pretty nice just to have everything in one single file and not have to like manage several images that depend on each other. Right? Yeah. In the demo repo, as I said, there is a Maven app which has sort of simple proof of concept how to make Maven apps build faster by using the cache. It's a little bit tricky that sort of Maven is so clever, because if you run tests and then you run like Maven install, then it will run the tests again. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you can disable the tests, or probably there's some way for it to see if some plugin or other that can make it like not run the tests if nothing has changed. But yeah, this is at least something for you. The Node app is sort of more fully fleshed out. It has some examples on how to like deal with the fact that you might want to get the test reports after the if the tests fail. And that's it. Everyone's leaving. Thank you for me.